There's an elephant in the room right now. You're not supposed to mention these things, I know. You're supposed to just ignore it. You're supposed to say, no, it's not happening. I don't see the elephant. It's not there. Well, I could easily say that. I could say, no, I don't see the elephant. It's not there. And then I'll just say something else instead. I'll kind of code it. I might say, for example, there's a wheelie bin in the room. Maybe I'll do that. That's what we'll do. We'll try that. So there's no elephant in the room. Forget I said that. There's a large wheelie bin in this room. An outdoor wheelie bin. Society has conditioned us that wheelie bins are only meant to be used outdoors. I don't necessarily agree with that. I happen to have a second recycling wheelie bin, which I don't usually need to put out. So it's in here. I use it for other things. Wheelie bins make very good indoor wheelbarrows. You need to move some shit. It's not too heavy, but I'm not going to tell you what I've been moving around in that bin. Suffice to say, if there's stuff you want to move around your house, you don't have a wheelie bin because everyone isn't a fucking gardener. I don't think I'd want to bring a wheelbarrow into the house. I'd feel it much more appropriate to bring in a nice clean plastic recycling wheelie bin into the house. You don't know where a wheelbarrow's been. Well, you do know where it's been. That's the problem. It's being in the garden. With all the slugs, rotting cabbages and compost and manure, shit, and whatever's on the ground and whatever you're doing with the wheelbarrow. Maybe you've been cleaning out your drains and putting the contents. We all know what the contents of drains are like. If you ever had your drains cleaned or done it yourself, you take down the contents and you go to dispose of them. That smell lingers. You even come within a mile of that stuff that you take out of the drain pipes and the gutters. That's like nuclear waste. It never goes away. And that's on your wheelbarrow. There's no wheelbarrow in this house, and if there was one, I wouldn't use it indoors. But a wheelie bin, a reasonably clean wheelie bin, nice plastic modern wheelie bin, yes, that's indoors fine with me. I have it there now. It's empty at the moment. There's a pillow on top of it. And something else I can't see from here, and it's perfectly fine. I've no problem with a wheelie bin being inside the house. Perfectly fine with it. I would trip over a wheelbarrow in here quite easily. I wouldn't trip over that wheelie bin. Now, I've just realised I may have been saying wheelie bin where I meant wheelbarrow and vice versa in this segment, and that's going to be a bastard to edit later. If I get it wrong and it sounds like I say wheelie bin when I'm actually referring to wheelbarrow, fix it in your brain. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your brain. Your brain is working fine. So you copy this information over to your brain. It's like when you get an old damaged hard drive and you manage to retrieve the data from the hard drive and you transfer it over to a clean hard drive where you can have a good look at it. The new clean hard drive is your brain and you're transferring this segment into your brain and you can sort it out there. I think a few times where I meant to say wheelbarrow, I said wheelie bin. I think. I'll find out later anyway. I just won't report back to you because that'll be during the editing process when I'll have finished speaking. I'm not going to come back and record an update. No.
Into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head.
The first time I ever got in trouble with the law, we were going to Galway in the car and a guard stopped us. An Irish police officer, we call them guards here, that's the brand. Unlike the mobile phone companies and the internet providers, they don't change their branding every 5 minutes. They've been called guards for, I think, pretty much since the foundation of the state. And this guard stopped us. I remember his words to this day, reverberating through my brain when I wake up in the middle of the night. I remember his exact words. He said, "You can't have a child in the front of the car." He was talking to my father. I was presumably on my mother's lap in the front seat. It There's only 2 seats up front. It's not one of those trucks where you have a big long seat across the front, or a Cadillac Eldorado, or whatever the name of Christ those are. No, you have 2 normal-sized seats in the front of a normal car over here. One is for the driver, and one is for the lead passenger. They're not called the co-pilot, they're called the lead passenger. Those terms may well become more appropriate when flying cars take off, so to speak. But no, on this occasion, the guard stopped us. He said, "You can't have a child in the front of the car." And I was banished to the back of the car with my brothers, which I think was rather unfair. These cars, the way they're set up is essentially they're 4-seater cars. Now, the back seat is essentially a sofa with no arms. It's a continuous bench. So, in theory, you can line up all of your children along the back seat and claim that nobody is being denied a seat of their own because it's a single seat that's designed for multiple people. You could, in theory, say that. But I would argue that their standard car, especially the smaller cars, they're designed for 4 people. That back seat, although it's one continuous bench, like something you'd sit on in a park, it's essentially 2 seats. It's 2 seats. You cram your third child in the middle, in between them. You have to expect that there'll be one to explore. They'll think, no, I don't have a seat. I'm a roaming passenger. I'm going to wander around the car. And that's what I did for the first few years of my life. I would wander around the car. I would visit the front of the car for a while, visit with my parents. And then I'd visit the back of the car and visit with my siblings. That era came to an end very swiftly, I can tell you, on that day. From that day forward, I was stuck in the middle of that non-seat in the middle at the back for the rest of my life. Well, I say the rest of my life. Our family owns a car now, and I almost always get to sit in the lead passenger seat, which is great. Although our latest car, if you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt myself there for a moment. He won't carry on in the background. He'll effectively pause. I'm not going to fade myself down and then talk over several minutes of perfectly usable content and then fade it up. No, I've paused that segment in the background and it'll resume when I'm finished, but I'll pretend that I'm talking over it. I don't even know which segment I'm going to use this in the middle of. I want to keep my options open. Suffice to say, whatever you've been listening to me say just now that I've interrupted, it's appalling. Absolute nonsense. Pure drivel. Pure shit. If there was a director's meeting for this podcast, the first thing on the agenda would be that segment. And I'd be the one to bring it up and I'd say, listen to this shit. Look, this is what we're putting out now. This. I mean, Jesus Christ. I think there's a gap. Is this possible? Is it possible for there to be a gap above one of your upper teeth, between the tooth and your head that your tooth is attached to? I know your teeth are all attached to your head. I can feel air or liquid going out through a little gap, like if you had a slight leak in the rubber that lines your sidecar door window, the window side car door, the door side car window. I'm sure you to Christ there's some standard there for what order you say those in. Is there a dictionary of car terms? I'm not in the motoring industry. You know the side doors that you have on cars? Beside the passenger and beside the driver, you have these windows, at least you used to. At the bottom of the pane of glass, there's rubber going along the rim. It's basically insulation that keeps out any water or wind or whatever, I presume, which I never understood, because these windows, they slide down into the door. When you open the side door in the car, the first thing that happens, whether it's a wind down thing or an electric push a button thing, the glass slides down into the door. That glass is at least a foot high, so it goes down into the door. So why would you need rubber lining along the bottom as if there's going to be a leak in there, when there's basically an underground fortress? I suppose when the window's closed, the glass comes just barely to the edge. There's no very little coverage beyond that. I suppose maybe you can get through just under the glass. I suppose there's that. Just seems a bit silly. You put an extra inch onto the bottom of the glass and problem solved, no need for the rubber. Maybe they're afraid nowadays that the child will escape under the glass. If there's just enough glass that when the side window is closed, there's no extra spare glass to block the gap just under the glass to stop water and wind coming in there, so you need rubber. That seems like. I suppose maybe rubber is cheaper than an extra few millimeters of glass. How much is rubber? I don't know. How much is glass? I don't know either. If it's such a big problem, you can make the glass very slightly thinner so it'll stretch further and that'll save you having to increase the costs. I don't know. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this interruption. I'm going to hand you back to the me of the past, but rest assured that whatever I've interrupted that was substandard is now done with, and the me of the past will have moved on to something acceptable. Mightn't be great, but it's acceptable. I decide what's acceptable on here as the producer of this shit. The book stops here, so if the book stops here, I get to decide what's suitable or not suitable. I'm like, you Americans, I know I'm always going on about you Americans, but everything in the world is about you Americans. We can't avoid it. You can't go to a movie now without seeing something about you Americans in it. I watched a movie a while ago. Maybe it was a documentary. It was about that fella Dan Rather, who you Americans have. Your news anchor losing his job because one of his reporters fucked up and he's editorially responsible for it. So that ended him. And it's a bit like that. If I fuck up, then I'm editorially responsible for it. But with that hefty responsibility also come privileges. So I get to interrupt this and return at whatever point I deem to be appropriate. And you've no control over it. When I hand you back to the me of the past and you think, oh, we missed a bit. I wonder what he was saying in the past that we didn't get to hear. I'll rewind it. That won't work for you. But since I've already explained at the beginning of the interruption that you're not really missing anything, I'm just going to hand you straight back to the part where I interrupted myself because I'm not going to waste that anyway. The point is moot. Anyway, back to the me of the past. I wouldn't want to be in a flying car. We have roads. I've paid taxes for these roads every year on this car, as you're required to maintain the road system. We're paying for the roads. Why would you want a flying car? Unless they're going to start using the motor tax to maintain the air as well. Actually, now that you mention it, if you're going to be flying in the air in a flying car, that air that you're flying in is polluted by the non-flying cars, so you're going to be pretty pissed off. I hope you're not going to charge motor tax to flying car operators or literally flying in the non-flying cars' farts. If you ever have an opportunity to go potholing, for the love of Christ, don't. Say no. Say no, no, no. I'm not a fucking lunatic. I'm not a psychic. This is a trick. This is clearly a trick. Someone says you want to go potholing. It's clearly a trick. If you say yes, there's going to be two men in white coats appear out of nowhere, and that's going to be the end of your freedom for at least 10 years until they deem you to have been cured. If you're lucky. If you're unlucky, they'll give you the Clockwork Orange treatment. Are you familiar with the Clockwork Orange treatment, you young people? You're probably not. You're probably not. But you're also probably not listening, because the young people are not really in the demographic of this show, if we're honest, are they? No. But if you happen to be a young person and you're listening to this and you're not familiar with Clockwork Orange, it was a very controversial movie in, I think, the 1970s by Stanley Kubrick. He made this film of the book Clockwork Orange. It was about a violent thug of a teenager, 20-something man, who went around recreationally beating people up, breaking into their homes, assaulting them and murdering them with swords and things, or beating them up with batons or something, being very weird about it. They had their own little weird slang, and they used to drink milk while they were doing it. Particular feel to this movie that was quite unique. It's a film of two halves, because halfway through he gets caught, ends up in prison, and gets put on some sort of government trial where they prop your eyelids open with wires or eye drops or something and make you watch a load of violent images on a TV. And it's supposed to make you immune to violence or afraid of violence or abhor violence forever. It basically brainwashes you into thinking violence is bad. And this is a very controversial movie. Anyway, that's the Clockwork Orange treatment. Now, why did I bring that up? What the Clockwork Orange treatment was? I can't remember. What was I talking about?
Into your head.
I just listened back to the first few seconds of that segment. Potholing apart. I was talking about potholing. And I said, if you ever have an opportunity to go potholing, just say no. Well, you know what I said because you can remember what I said. I was reminding myself so I could continue. I first found out about potholing. I think it was last year. I saw the picture of where this fella had got trapped exploring underground caves. He climbed down a mile-deep well and then he go down some underground tunnels that could flood at any minute. And I saw a picture of where this fella got stuck. He went down way, way down, and then he went down further into a little curved tunnel. He went down head first, got stuck in this curved tunnel, his head sticking out into an underground chamber into which he was about to be the first person ever to set foot. Except he never did because he got stuck in the entrance. People were trying to pull at his feet and get him out, but no, he completely stuck. Couldn't get him out. He was stuck upside down in this little curved length of tunnel. The image was, there was a drawing showing how he was stuck. His feet were sticking up into the cavern above where all his associates were trying to get him out. So what they did was wait a few days and then poured concrete on top of him, and that was the end of that. So that image stuck in my mind for some time. A few days after I saw that, my wife casually mentioned that she once went potholing with was it the Girl Scouts or something? I don't know. If your child ever says, I'm being brought potholing by the same people who teach me how to tie knots and make cookies, say no. Say absolutely not, no way. You fucking lunatic. No, you're not going potholing. That's for lunatics. Plenty of time for exploring the ground when you're dead and buried. That can't be enjoyable at all, surely, can it? Down these well holes, along these underground tunnels about a mile underground. It's like being in a coal mine, except there's no way to make money out of it. Unless you're a very unusual sponsor who likes to sponsor you being dead. That's the thing with these adventure things. You have to find a sponsor who likes to sponsor you being dead. Maybe some sort of a funeral home or something. But that fella didn't even get to go to a funeral home. They poured concrete on top of him and he was left underground forever. It was like the opposite of being left to freeze on top of Mount Everest. At least when you do it on Mount Everest, 80 years later, the young climbers are walking past your frozen corpse every few days during the summer. So at least you get visited and people get freaked out seeing you. So there's that. So no, if you ever have an opportunity to go potholing, if it helps, watch Clockwork Orange today and have it permanently in your brain associated with potholing. And you'll remember if you're ever invited, wait a minute, potholing. What do I know about potholing? Oh yes, Clockwork Orange. Absolutely not. No, fuck that shit. No, thank you. At least in the coal mine, someone sends down lunch. They literally invented a new lunch for coal mines. Pies were invented for coal mines. This pastry thing where the whole meal is contained within the pastry and you can eat it with your hands as long as it's either cooled down a bit and you've washed your hands or you're wearing oven gloves while you're eating it. You can eat that with your hands in the coal mine. It's perfect. Of course, nowadays they've ruined it. When you're eating a pie, and it's perfectly fine to eat a pie for your dinner, even if you're not in the coal mines. But if you're going to eat it, eat just the pie and nothing but the pie. Don't go putting on mushy peas and chips with it. Because that's just taking the piss. It's a self-contained meal. Eat just the pie on its own. If you want chips and mushy peas, figure out some way to incorporate those inside the pastry. Or make a new type of pastry that's made out of fried potatoes if that's so important to you. But no, potholing, Jesus Christ, no. If you go potholing, you're banned from listening. I want nothing more to do with you. Go listen to Joe Rogan or something.
Are you going into your head?
I've got a sponge here. I think it's pink. It's one of those. Well, I use it as a shower sponge. You probably use it to clean your toilet, do you? You probably do. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm rubbing the rough side of the sponge. It might get automatically filtered out by various systems here. But I'm a fan of these sponges that have a rough side on them. They're very good. They can have a good scratch. You get in the shower, you use one of these, lather yourself up, and then you have the fun part. You give yourself a break between lathering yourself up and rinsing yourself off. You have a nice little break where you have some recreational scratching. I like to scratch myself with a sponge with a rough side. Now, what the sponge is doing in here, I don't know. I should explain what in here is. I don't mean I've just found it inside my mouth or something. No, just found it on the floor in here, and now it's in my hand. I know there's a 5-second rule. If something has been on the ground for more than 5 seconds, you're not supposed to eat it. Don't worry. These podcasts are tagged as explicit in all the relevant places, so arguably it wouldn't be a problem. What? No. They used to do an occasional thing called the urination session of the week. Now, I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking, if it's an occasional segment, how can it be of the week? Well, there'd be weeks when you didn't have a urination session worth talking about, or there'd be other weeks where you barely urinated at all, or you urinated but it wasn't particularly memorable. Although now that I think about it, I wasn't talking about memories of urination sessions from that week in the early days of this podcast. No, what I was doing was pissing as live on the program. I used to use a portable voice recorder plugged into a headset. I used to walk around recording on that when I needed to piss, as I often did in those days. In fact, most of the time I would start recording just before I start pissing. It's time for the urination segment of the week. I suppose that was possibly a bit much. I do remember some listeners thinking it was quite entertaining for some reason. I think really that speaks more to the quality of the listener. As you know, in recent years, I'm trying to do something intellectual here. Something worth saving on archive.org for the rest of eternity. Oh no, back in those days, anything for content, you just start pissing. I just take things out and start pissing from them. And then save it. I'm too old for that shit now to be going around letting the whole world listen to me pissing. Pissing is a private thing. Public toilets shouldn't even exist. And I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking, what if you need a piss and you're away from home? You need public toilets for that. You're in your shopping mall. You go down into that very, very long corridor that leads down to the public toilets. Because God forbid they use a bit of shop frontage on the actual mall for basic human needs like pissing. No, they're both at the end of a 3-mile long corridor. You go down that corridor. There should be a line of doors along that. Along one side there should be at least 15 doors. Each of them should have the word men on it. And the other side, 15 doors. Each of them should have the word women on it. And each of those should be an individual, separate, one-person operated toilet. It's a start. I remember it in the 90s. Kellogg's Start cereal. It was like a men's version of Special K. I have a book lined up in my Audible. This isn't an advertisement, by the way. I don't have an Audible link. I have a book lined up to read about the Mandela effect. Now, back in the 1990s, I remember, maybe it was the late 80s, early 90s, I distinctly remember that Kellogg's Special K used to be pops rather than flakes. They used to be like Rice Krispies or something like that. Corn pops, and then they suddenly were changed and became flakes. A completely different cereal, but they were still Special K. Now, I don't think I've ever heard anyone else talk about that before. Would that be the Mandela effect? The Mandela effect is an alleged phenomenon whereby people, when Nelson Mandela finally died of old age, having been released from prison 30 years as the elderly president of South Africa and then enjoyed his retirement. He eventually died. And when that happened, people started saying, wait a minute, I could have sworn he died in the 80s or 90s in prison. I remember him dying. Why was he still alive? Well, I know he's not still alive now. He's just died. But why was he alive until now to die again? People dying twice now. What's that about? And that was referred to as the Mandela effect. Now, if it can happen to a much respected and admired world leader, I don't see why it can't have happened to a stupid, shitty, disgusting, cardboardy, low-calorie cereal that nobody wants to eat. And by the way, if you ever do find a need to eat Special K, as I have done in the past, I've been on diets where I thought Special K, that'll help. And you get the Special K, and what you do is mix it with something else that's not Special K until it drowns out the taste of the Special K, or the non-taste. I don't mean put a few berries and a slice of banana in it, no. You mix it in with about half a gallon of chocolate yogurt. Basically mix it with sweets. There's another cereal called Collins Crave that's basically, is it Crave? It's the one that's basically chocolate chip biscuits in a bowl that you put milk into. And that's a cereal. But mix that stuff in with it and it'll be fine. The purpose of the Special K is just to bulk up whatever you happen to be having so you have a little less of whatever you would otherwise be having. Perhaps you're having scrambled eggs for breakfast. You mix in some Special K with that. It's like the hamburger helper of the breakfast world. You mix it in, it doesn't do anything to the taste. It's like mixing cooking oil in. It doesn't affect the taste, so you don't have to worry about that. The only problem with the taste is if you're eating it on its own, and that's why you don't eat it on its own. You wouldn't eat hamburger helper on its own. I presume. I've never tried or seen hamburger helper in my life. I've only heard about it on American television programs. But I presume people aren't going and buying a tube of hamburger helper or whatever format it comes in. Does it come in a tube or a can or a bottle or something? Maybe it comes in a sauce bottle. I don't know. I presume people aren't going squirting it into their mouths directly. Well, there's hundreds of billions of people in America. I'm sure there's bound to be a few who do that, but that's just the numbers. So no. So the same should be true of Special K. I thought I'd just finish up with an update on the wheelbarrow situation. I went to the trouble of recording myself saying wheelbarrow several times in a number of different tones and afflections, is it afflections? Wherever you call it. Saying it several times in different ways so I could cut and paste it into the parts where I accidentally said wheelbarrow where I meant to say wheelie bin. So now the part where you hear me talking about how I've accidentally said wheelie bin where I meant wheelbarrow makes very little sense to you. So sorry about that. I do apologise, but I have a sense of, maybe it's a slight OCD thing, or maybe I just like to do things properly. So I went in and corrected it. I went at great pains to go in. I haven't actually done this yet. I haven't started the editing process yet, but I intend to go in and replace all that. So I'm recording this in advance. I know that's a bit presumptuous of me to assume that I'm going to go in and successfully do that. If I don't, I won't use this segment, and none of us will be any the wiser. I suppose that's a bad thing. Why would you not want to be wiser? I suppose being ignorant has its advantages. Being none the wiser has its advantages. I suppose that's why the phrase exists. When people say you're none the wiser, they usually mean it in a reasonably positive way. There's something that you're better off not knowing. And you're better off not knowing, perhaps, about the wheelbarrow editing if I failed to do it. And that's why if I failed to do the editing of the wheelbarrow thing, I won't put this segment in. I suppose you're also better off not knowing that I haven't attempted that yet and that I'm recording this in advance. It's authentic though, isn't it? I'm telling you exactly what I'm doing. I'm recording this now even though I haven't done the edit yet. And I'm telling you that I haven't done the edit yet and that I'm recording this just in case I do succeed. Well, I say in case I do succeed. I will succeed. It's 95% certain that I will succeed, especially since this segment now I don't want to waste. So it'll succeed. It'll succeed. Dear, I will succeed. I will succeed. So I think that's the end of the programme. So that's good.